You're listening to The Takeover, and it's Wednesday night on Life FM.
Wellness Wednesdays on The Takeover. Brought to you by station sponsor, Kelli Naturopath. Book your free discovery call today to uncover better health and quality of life.
Kelli Naturopath joins us in the studio for another Wellness Wednesdays. Kelli, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Doing well. Getting closer and closer to Christmas. Like less than 2 weeks? No, 2.5 weeks to go now. So, yeah, it's getting,
It'll be here before we know it.
That's it. And next week you're actually going to join us for a special Christmas edition of Wellness Wednesdays, which I think is very timely and very important because we're going into the silly season, and it's called the silly season for a reason. We need to look after ourselves. So we're going to be discussing Christmas and all of that next week. And in fact, if you've got a question for Kelli that relates to Christmas, whether it's about, treating yourself and making sure that you look after yourself, diet-wise or stress-wise, all of that sort of thing, let us know. 0413 90 1079. Tonight, though, for our second to last Wellness Wednesday of the year, we are discussing endometriosis. Very different to the Christmas topic, but I think that endometriosis, and we've touched on it very briefly, I think, throughout the year, is one of those things that it's so common. It affects so many women and their families, and it's something that I think still a lot of people don't actually fully understand, myself included. Like I've heard about it, and I've been to a cabaret show that talked about it, and it was really interesting. But I still feel like there's a lot to learn about what endometriosis actually is. So we're going to unpack it tonight.
Yeah, we'll unpack what we do know about it.
Yep.
Obviously, the research is growing all the time, so hopefully we'll know a lot more in the coming years. But it is very common, like you mentioned. So 1 in 9 women experience endometriosis, and it can be extremely debilitating.
Yep.
It does often run in families. So often, sisters or, mum and daughter will tend to have it. And what it actually is when the lining of the uterus starts to grow lesions outside of the uterus. So it can grow on the outside of the uterus. It can grow on other organs in the surrounding areas as well. And I suppose in the past it's thought to be a hormonal condition, and because it is a women's health condition, we kind of lump it in with, it involves the hormones, which it does to a certain extent, but it's actually more so considered an inflammatory, a disease of inflammation and immune dysregulation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, those are sort of the areas that we want to tackle.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, how it might present itself, it usually will present with heavy periods and a lot of pain with that, often back pain, often can be before, during, or any time throughout the woman's cycle. So not the typical just pelvic cramps that most women might experience. And it can be quite severe.
Yeah.
And it can often occur with severe fatigue, headaches as well, changes in digestive function as well, and bowel habits. So, and for some women it will be, taking time off, needing to take lots of time off work or school, or, rearranging their social calendar, because it is that bad that they just can't get out of bed.
It's really, that's what we keep hearing, is that it is quite a debilitating disorder. And I think that even now there is this stigma perhaps associated with the endometriosis, that it's just really bad period pain, but it's a lot more than that. It is actually quite a debilitating illness, really. Is there a cure? Is there a way that we can remove endometriosis?
So the conventional approach is usually surgery.
Okay.
Or hormonal replacement, so going on the contraceptive pill to try and manage the hormonal aspect to help with dampening down the symptoms.
Yep.
So it's a symptomatic approach, that one. Within the surgery, they will try and remove many of the lesions as possible, and this can be quite life-changing for women. For some women, that improvement can then last a long time, and for other people, they have to go back for repeated surgeries, so over and over again.
Which in itself, I guess, is not ideal. Any type of surgery is not great if you can avoid it. Yeah.
No, that's right. And I suppose from my point of view, you know, from the naturopathic perspective and nutritional perspective, there is actually a lot we can do. As I said, we're talking about inflammation, we're talking about immune dysregulation, and as well as the hormonal imbalance side of things. And from that, if we can kind of tackle those underlying drivers, those underlying causes, we can really make a huge impact on the girls' quality of life.
Yep.
Yeah, so help them manage their symptoms by addressing the underlying causes.
Yeah. We're going to chat about that straight after this. We're actually going to take a quick break, come back and talk about some of the naturopathic treatments for endometriosis, but also for the fellas, you know, the guys who are maybe listening and thinking, oh, this doesn't apply to me. Well, it doesn't physically apply to you, but you probably will come across someone with those stats, 1 in 9 women.
Most
You'll
likely.
probably come across someone, whether it's a sister or a friend or another family member who has endometriosis. And we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, just how you can generally support them as well. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Kelli K Naturopath on Wellness Wednesdays on The Takeover. You're on Life FM.
I don't want to grow up. Tell me that.
You're listening to The Takeover on Life FM. Maz and Holly with you tonight, as well as Kelli K Naturopath joining us for our second to last Wellness Wednesdays for the year. Kelli, welcome back.
Thank you.
Tonight we're chatting about endometriosis. It's a word that the media, I don't want to say throws around, but we do hear of quite a bit. And I think for good reason. 1 in 9 Australian women will experience endometriosis. It's not something that only affects a small amount of the population by any standard. It's really becoming quite, it is a debilitating disease, but it's becoming quite common. And we're finding that more and more. Tonight we're talking about what it actually is, and you've explained that really well. But now we want to chat a little bit about how, from a naturopathic perspective, we can actually lessen some of those symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned previously, you know, we're looking at a disease of inflammation and a disease of immune dysregulation. So nutrition and natural medicine is really well positioned to be able to address some of this. So we'd be first looking at some dietary approaches. So looking at anti-inflammatory diet can be really helpful. A lot of women, particularly if they have very heavy periods, will find that eliminating dairy can be a big game changer for them.
Okay, yep.
Not everyone, so obviously I'm speaking generally.
Yep.
But a lot will find that. And then reducing the sugars and the processed foods, the refined foods, and increasing the fruits and vegetables, olive oils, lean proteins, and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
So whole grains, lots of fibers as well. So that general kind of dietary approach and really trying to tackle the inflammation from a dietary perspective is sort of element number 1, I suppose. And then we might look at using some anti-inflammatory herbal medicines to things like turmeric, have a lot of research behind them for their anti-inflammatory impact. And then things as well like magnesium has some anti-inflammatory impact, but it's also really important for progesterone production, so helping with balancing out that estrogen-progesterone picture. And it can really help with pain, so it helps reduce the intensity of pain and cramping and spasms and things like that. So a lot of women will find benefit from something like that as well. The other area which we would also always be looking at is what's going on in the gut. So there's some new evidence, or I say new, in the past, 5 to 10 years, there's new evidence of bacteria imbalances and things in the gut that are associated with this type of condition. And particularly bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine associated with endometriosis as well. Yep. So we'd want to be addressing that, and, that will look a little bit different for each person as an individual. But the overall goal would be to ensure that their gut bacteria are thriving and healthy and in balance. So there's no overgrowth and there's no undergrowth. I suppose.
It's all healthy.
And also addressing any inflammation that might be caused by foods coming in, whether it's unhealthy foods or whether it's a particular food that person has a sensitivity to that might be driving inflammation as well.
Yeah.
So kind of going through that elimination process for some people can be helpful.
Yep.
To make sure that there aren't any other triggers there as well.
And that's something that you would go through in a session.
Yeah, that's right. In a session, you know, one of the things we'd also always do is go through their diet, go through their symptoms. Sometimes I'll ask people to keep a food and symptom diary to help track what's going on. And, you know, usually there's other symptoms and things as well if they do react to a certain food. And we would look at, you know, what might be triggering and then do a very specific and intentional elimination process.
Okay, yep.
And reintroduction process to see what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay. So there are options basically. You don't have to go
options. Yeah.
You don't have to go down the surgery route if you would prefer to look at natural therapies.
Yeah, that's right. Or you can also do both at the same time. Yeah. So everyone's going to be different depending on the severity and their experience of it. And their life stage as well. So whether they're much younger or older. And so it will, you know, that decision is a very personal one, but it's not a problem to do both at the same time. In fact, we would encourage it because even once you have those lesions removed, we don't want them growing back.
No, that's right.
So we want to be able to look at the long-term goals and make sure that, you know, we can keep you in a better state of health long-term.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I know we've got to let you go, Kelli, but just very quickly, pregnancy is another thing that endometriosis can affect. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it can definitely impact people's fertility, which might be another reason why people might opt for surgery.
Yeah.
As well as just, you know, the symptoms. But yeah, it definitely can be a cause of infertility for some for some women. Not all women, but for some, for sure.
As a whole, endometriosis, while it presents those different symptoms, it's not actually a life-threatening condition, is it?
No, it's not a life-threatening condition, but it's a condition that severely impacts quality of life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting learning more about it, and you know, I think this is really interesting for young men as well to know that they're partners or mums or aunties or, you know, cousins, friends who are female are potentially going through something like endometriosis, and there are ways to support them.
There are ways to support them, absolutely. And probably one of the biggest things that I didn't mention is that a lot of women can become anemic if they have endometriosis due to the heavy bleeding. And, you know, so there's these flow-on effects, you know, that can impact people long-term. And, you know, then they have to have infusions and blah, blah, you know, and so, and it's really distressing and draining having to manage that all the time and manage the pain as well. So and another thing for managing the pain as well that's come up in the research quite recently is something called N-acetylcysteine, which is an amino acid, and that has shown some really good results in helping people manage their pain. And there's a few other bits and pieces as well, but there's some really good research coming out now, which is good that they're having a bit of a focus on that.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
And particularly some of the more, you know, nutritional or herbal things that might have a good effect.
Yeah. Well, Kelli, thank you so much for joining us tonight and shedding a light on endometriosis. It's something that we hear a lot about, but I think you've really explained it really well. And there's a lot available out there for anyone who's suffering or for their loved ones to put in place to help support them. So, Kelli, thank you so much. We will catch up with you again next week for our final Wellness Wednesday for the year. And we've had a lot of fun this year, so I'm looking forward to next week. If you've got any questions for Kelli relating to Christmas and the silly season and health and well-being, text them through 04 13 90 1079. Kelli K Naturopath, thank you so much.